let this be an example of thinking about tempo in ZvP and how Zerg can take tempo, meaning continue to take initiative and decide the flow of the action in the match, even when the Protoss is making adepts, which is perhaps easier said than done. The first aspect of sort of having something that can disclose something from the opponent depends on having a build with some tools that can agitate them. So I go Hatch Gas Pool. It's a macro build, but it also has potential to poke at them a little bit when link speed finishes up. This opponent I faced 3 times prior to this game on this map, and they destroyed me every time with a 2-base Adept all-in. They go for a similar attack this game, but I take tempo by doing a small lane drop and just messing up their build a little bit, forcing their attention on their side of the map and knowing exactly what's going on. Sun Tzu said, agitate him and ascertain the pattern of his movement. If you present a threat on the opponent's side of the map, they will disclose what they are building, what their unit composition is going to be, and what their infrastructure looks like. So the important thing here, Overlord, scouting what's being chrono boosted. This could even be a little bit more to the left to watch this cybernetics core. I'm taking my 3rd base. The first gas went into link speed, and then I pulled 2 workers off of gas and built an Evo chamber when my link speed was halfway done. It times out pretty nicely for the Evo chamber to finish, and then you can morph a drop Overlord. The opponent opened with a very economical build. Often the strongest all-ins are going to be ones where they open with a very greedy build and then leverage that early greed into early to mid-game aggression. So these 8 links are a way for me to get value in my investment in link speed and take map control. So I've produced the first round of dangerous units. The opponent has 1 Stalker, 1 Adept, and 1 Zealot, but these can't really function well out on the map being aggressive yet. So I'm taking this 4-minute window for myself with this link speed, and then with the drop research on one of these Overlords, I'll be able to put lings into the bases. So they walled this area off really tightly, and there's some other ship core they could photon overcharge. I'm not going to break this wall, but with a small investment into an Evo chamber and drop research, I can hop into the main and cause problems where they don't expect them. It's really important when you're taking tempo with some type of pressure to drone really hard behind it. Either when you're doing some aggressive thing, you need an aggressive follow-up, or you need an economical follow-up. Your larva should be morphed into something. So here I'm using this to be able to drone my 3rd really freely. So they're going for a 2-base all-in, but I can still drone my 3rd quite a lot. I'm making 1 spore per base just to be safe against DT, but the match is kind of being played on my terms right now because I have this threat on their side of the map. You look at the opponent's camera, their attention is on their side of the map. They're building all their gateways, they have their prism on the way. So their build is kind of powering up, but this is something that just delays the push by a little bit, and it also reveals the push. So this lane drop scouts the prism. I know exactly what's going on. I killed a Stalker, so Stalkers are worth quite a bit. They're worth gas. These 8 lings are pure mineral, so I would say that's a pretty good trade. To go into the base to kill the Stalker, an even better refinement would have been to pull these lings back into the Overlord and just leave that threat in the game. Because once the Stalker is killed, they don't have any anti-air units, they just have Zealot, Adept, and Mothership Core. So that would kind of keep a looming threat by their main. These Adepts warped into the main, that's 3. That's 3 less Adepts that the opponent has here, which makes defending the attack easier. So you're forcing the opponent to divide their forces from offense and defense, rather than letting someone be greedy in the early game and then be totally on your side of the map with all of their value. So since I know what's going on and I've droned well, I have 1 spine per base on the way, my melee upgrade is already done, I'm morphing a lot of Ling Bane, and I'm making a few extra queens here and there. So in the times where I lost to this opponent's build, I didn't do a Ling drop early on, so they had tempo for the first big attack, which is their Adept Prism move. And then a lot of the time, I would beat a group of Adepts, say here, that was shaded in between my bases, but then the Prism would come into my main and warp in a ton of units, and then I would lose half my workers in the main. So since I got to practice against them doing this build over and over again, I kind of figured out, alright, my Ling Bane can manage one area with a lot of Adepts, but they can't deal with the Prism. Queens can. They can't necessarily kill a Prism, but they can prevent it from warping units in your base. So I have 3 queens here on their own hotkey to deal with that Prism. So they won't be pulled in my army. Their sole responsibility is to prevent Adepts from being warped into my main. And then these Lings can kind of guard the 3rd and natural. 1 spine per base is just a sort of nice buffer. The AI of attacking units will prioritize other attacking units above workers, so they would have to manually micro focus firing the drones. So I see this 3rd Nexus going up, and their attack has pretty much totally failed. The Adept all-ins are very snowbally, in the sense that if they can break through your first line of units, they can just spread out on all your bases and kill your workers, and it's pretty much over. But if they can't break that squad of units, and they also can't warp into your main, you've stopped it. But then you still have the rest of the match ahead of you. It doesn't mean that you win. You have to figure out, alright, how can I take tempo again? So the way that I've done that is I broke off 18 of my Lings, it doesn't need to be a precise number, and I put it on their side of the map, while I still have the majority of my army value here at home in case they did another attack. These Lings can threaten the opponent whenever they move out. It's sort of like a backstab. The Ling drop was the first backstab, and then this is the second one that's lined up. If I saw an army move out here, I could run some Lings in here, or into the natural, and again force them to divide their units between attacking and defending, rather than letting them attack with everything they have. They take a 3rd, I take a 4th, and a macro hatch. If you're going for a style with a lot of Lings, the macro hatch is necessary when you reach 3 base saturation. Roach Warren for some Ravagers is my next sort of piece in this progression. Ling Bane into Roach Ravager, Ling Bane. My upgrade is melee, so I still want to have a lot of Ling Bane. And there's a Prism with this attack. I have my queens, they're on their own hotkey, and they're targeted to focus the Prism. They also built up a lot of energy, since I made them to defend the first Adept attack. There's a bit of a traffic jam here. In the ideal case, I would have microed these queens over here, move command, and then to attack the Prism, so they didn't get stuck behind this Roach Ravager line. But I reacted to this and decided, alright, well, the queens are kind of body blocked by the roaches, so they might as well just heal the roaches. It's very important to make sure your queens are hotkeyed separately from Ravagers. You won't be able to use Corrosive Bile if you have queens in the same group, because they take priority in the order. So queens putting pressure on the Prism. Queens do almost nothing to Immortals, so just making sure that they're clicked to the Prism. If I was a top level pro player, I probably would have been able to send in the Lings during that attack, but I'm not, so I didn't. But that would be a potential improvement. Lurker Den was my next progression in tech, and then I'll take Hydra Range after that. Baneling Run By is a really nice move against Protoss if you have Bane Speed and melee upgrades. You can wipe a probe line in mere moments to get a really big advantage. So attack at the 4th. This doesn't really do anything since my army was really close by. I built an extra Spore here whenever I moved my queens away. It kind of fills the same role. So Baneling Run By at the 3rd, It didn't deal huge damage, but it maintained that tempo of forcing the opponent to be scared and have to micro stuff on their side of the map. And then a Baneling drop as the next piece. Just consistently trading out some of your units in a cost-efficient manner in different locations. That sort of allows you to just mass up a big army and not be pressured immediately. So Ling Bane, Road Ravager, Hydra. I'll be morphing Lurkers next. This situation here, I have Lurkers, but Lurkers are really bad at moving up to an army and attacking that army, but they're very good at controlling space, especially defending high ground. So I'm just leaving my army here. I'm controlling the center of the map, and I'm using small groups of army to go and continue to cut up their economy, bit by bit. You could attack into the Protoss army, and sometimes you'll win, but assuming the other player is macroing well, say they're around even skill, the defender is going to have a big advantage with Photon Overcharge, and will usually be able to beat your army and then push back across the map. So rather than use my whole army and shove in, I'm using this army to control the center of the map, and then using smaller squads of units to cripple their bases and take a 5th base. So I'm defending this 5th by having my army here. Generally, you're going to take a better engagement for your cost, defending a high ground, than you would if you were here on creep, and the opponent was on high ground attacking down into you. So this is one of the situations where maybe it's better to attack off creep just for the sake of where that location lies on the map relative to your expansions. Attacking in this path is just ridiculously bad, so I'm not really worried about that. That took the opponent by surprise. They didn't scout in front of their army, and a lot of times they won't check their army if they don't think that there would be an army there at that point. So let's look at their vision and their thought process, because a lot of times an opponent, even a GM, will make a big mistake like that, not necessarily because they're bad, but because they were doing something else at the time. So this is their vision for that. They don't have vision of what's in the map center, and I just pressure them with Ling Bane here. So they're frantically trying to defend this, and they're saying, oh, the opponent just threw away some units, so I should be able to go push across and deal some big damage. They're looking at their bases, they're building some pylons so they're not supply blocked, they're killing changelings, and then there's a big army up there. So this whole game, they've kind of been playing catch-up of defend the harassment, check and see if you can push, defend the harassment, try and expand, and just consistently falling behind in supply. Zerg units are very cheap, and they're fast, so it behooves the Swarm to aggressively place them around, like I just grabbed 4 Hydras and some Lings and sent them into a base, some Mutas and sent them into a base, and continuing to defend this high ground. As their army gets stronger and stronger, I can put more and more Lurkers here to make it more difficult for them to break. Once you have a lot of Lurkers, you can tech into Ultralisk, Greater Spire. You could do a Muta switch if you wanted to, but this was a really good example, I felt like, of taking tempo and maintaining that momentum over the course of the whole game by just constantly pressuring them.